What's up guys, XHOUNDISHx here, and today I wanted to talk about the THORN hand cannon because of course it's making its way back into the game for Rise of Iron, and we're going to have to do a quest to pick this thing up, which I think is pretty cool. But today I wanted to talk about balance with the weapon because it is a somewhat controversial weapon in PvP for sure. So of course many people really despise the Thorn in PvP primarily because of the burn damage, and I'd also guess because a lot of year 1 memories are still in the back of our mind of how this weapon used to handle. But Thorn did receive a pretty hefty nerf going into the Taken King, and it sits in a much less obnoxious place right now. The burn damage in PvP is so comparatively low compared to before, and I used this thing for 5 games in a row to get all of this footage, and I genuinely saw just 2 people burn out to damage over time in all of those games. So, you know, it's nowhere near as obnoxious as it was, but this is the lowest impact variety of hand cannons. Yet if we think back to year 1, 2 headshots was enough for damage over time to finish the kill. So yeah, it was kind of broken, but since the damage over time effect in PvP is so much lower, is it still going to be a problem in the Crucible right now? Well, I think the reason that people hate the weapon is that the damage over time visual effect can be pretty horrible and fairly obnoxious on its own without the bonus damage that you actually get, and I totally understand that. Unfortunately with Thorn, it's just what the weapon does. It is a bit of a troll, but seriously, with the damage over time being so low in PvP right now, I think that this bonus, if anything, is going to be more of a keep their health down kind of thing. There were a few occasions when I was playing where I felt like I got kills because the opponent couldn't regen health as quickly if they were backing out of a gunfight, and I actually think this is a pretty cool utility for the bonus in general PvP and one-on-one gunfights. But of course there's more than just the burn damage to talk about, so let's go over some base weapon stats. My Thorn has a range stat of 41 with perfect balance equipped as opposed to Send It, and this is pretty much the base starting point for range when people look for good hand cannon rolls. You can opt to go for Send It, but of course you're going to lose a chunk of stability, so essentially you can go with stability and have not great range, or you can go with decent range and end up with pretty poor stability. And when you think about legendary hand cannon rolls, range primarily and also stability are things that people look out for, and it's pretty easy to get a legendary which has better PvP stats than the Thorn does. It's a usable weapon of course in the right hands, and Thorn obviously it still does work, but it is a little bit lackluster in a lot of situations against the meta. And really, the only way to compete with this in raw stats would be a mild accuracy buff, maybe some stability, and even a range buff of a few points, and that would bring Thorn to a more usable spot in terms of just those stats, like I said. But of course, I am by no means saying this should happen in PvP, and I really doubt that it will. The one thing that I don't like about all of this though is the apparent fear of exotic hand cannons inside of Destiny. When you think back to year 1, Thorn was pretty much a god, Hawkmoon was incredibly good, and the same obviously for the Last Word. And right now in PvP, the Last Word is pretty good in the right hands. Hawkmoon is kind of the same, but it has been knocked out of line quite a lot. When I think to the start of the April update, I think it was in a pretty decent spot. And then of course Thorn isn't super strong anymore, regardless of how annoying it can actually be. And then we have the First Curse, which for most people just doesn't compete in a lot of modes, and then the Ace of Spades, which is actually pretty solid, but is possibly the closest of the exotics to just being a normal legendary hand cannon. And what I'm saying here in essence is that I don't think this level of anxiety around exotic hand cannons is quite justified, since a good or god roll, Lord Hyfixer, IS Luna, and many other hand cannons can instantly outmatch most of the exotics. So that's something that I'd like Bungie to bear in mind. I don't think, you know, it's a terrible thing if an exotic hand cannon is just a touch better than, you know, some of the other hand cannons that you can get. Essentially though, if nothing really changes with Thorn in PvP, you have very little to worry about. Yeah, you'll get that gross kind of green stuff all over your screen, but it's not going to affect your engagement by a massive amount, and it's even less likely that you'll actually burn out or die to the damage over time. I am interested in the damage over time stack in PvE and how that could make Thorn a viable weapon in some other areas of the game. Of course, we'll see any changes they make going forward in September. But anyway guys, these are my thoughts on the Thorn. Let me know how you feel about Thorn in the comments. Are you happy that it's returning? Do you want it to be strong, or are you absolutely dreading seeing it in the game once again? It's a pretty interesting one, but if you guys have enjoyed the video, a like is always appreciated. If you guys are new to the channel, be sure to hit subscribe for a lot more Destiny content. But for now, you guys have an awesome day.